Picture a typical Midwestern winter evening, much like tonight. A shooting star, a dive bar, and a cellist changed my life. As a professional musician, I often work odd hours, and this particular evening was no exception. A friend's invitation to an open mic was intriguing to me. I was living in my basement, engaged to be divorced. I was happy to get out of that pressure cooker, if only for a few hours. On the drive over, I pondered the shambles of my life and the dead end I had come to creatively. I had centered everything around winning a full-time orchestra position, spending thousands of hours practicing, making reads, and a fortune on auditions. I was a musical mercenary, working for the paycheck, and I was deeply unhappy and unfulfilled. My first sign came in the form of a shooting star. It went on for what seemed like an eternity. I knew it was a sign of what I had no idea. I arrived at the dive bar still marveling at what had just happened. It wasn't until years later I discovered it was the Geminid meteor shower. And for you astrology buffs out there, yes, I am a Gemini. I joined my friends at a cluster of tables front and center. The evening was in full swing with singer-songwriters taking the stage. In walks a man whom I later discovered was known as Cello Dave. As he took the stage, I was taken aback by the beauty that came from his instrument. It washed over me, and everything else ceased to exist. It took me to a place of calm, a cathartic release that spoke to my very soul. When he finished, our friends introduced us. The connection was electric and instantaneous. We chatted over drinks. We shared a love of music, travel, and adventure. Next thing we knew, the bar was closing. As I walked out into the frigid night, I was struck by his smile and the deep creases flowing from the corners of his sparkling blue eyes. I was in a very vulnerable time in my life. Why did this music speak to me so deeply? How was it able to transform me and transport me out of the tatters of my life? The words of the composer Philip Glass came to mind. My experience with music is that it's like an underground river. It's always there. And like an underground river, we don't know where it comes from, and we don't know where it's going. The only difference is whether we are listening to it or not. Was I listening? Or was I fighting, instead of allowing myself to go with the flow? I knew the answer. I was fighting with every ounce of my being to prove I had what it took to make it in the classical music world. And in that world, you embrace fear for a living. Walking on stage to perform, ready or not, the work, the travel, the constant drive for perfection, it takes its toll. Being a part of an orchestra is an unbelievably special thing. The feeling of so many people working together to create such beauty, it still takes me to a very special place. But it is also a little bit like walking on a double-edged sword. There's security and gratification in knowing that you're part of something larger than yourself, but you're interpreting works in a centuries-old tradition. Wash, rinse, repeat. You are also completely replaceable with plenty of qualified musicians waiting in the wings. Not to mention the rampant sexism and abysmal pay. I decided to embrace my fear, to stop fighting, and to start experiencing what flow felt like. I had no way of knowing, but this liminal hallway of my life would take nearly a decade to navigate. I decided to set aside stability and conformity to step off the cliff, transitioning from a commodity to a creative force, and from a creative force to an activist. My second sign came in the form of a dream. In the dream, I saw a familiar figure, an Aztec dancer I'd photographed in Utah years prior. He wore a flowing headdress of iridescent feathers that moved in mesmeric waves as if they were an extension of his body. He stood in front of a huge tsunami, arms outstretched, as if embracing the oncoming wave. As it enveloped him, he turned and looked at me and sent a single message: create. I knew I had to embrace my fear of failure, of judgment, of perfection, and act. Expressing oneself through the act of creating can benefit both the listener and the creator. In the case of Russian composer Dmitri Shostakovich, he used his compositional voice as a voice of rebellion. Stalin disagreed. In 1948, Stalin banned his music for failing to uphold the communist ideology. Shostakovich's reaction was clear and succinct. Even if they cut off both my hands and I have to hold my pen in my teeth, I shall continue writing music. And he did so until the end of his life at the age of 69 in 1975. A suitcase packed by his front door for pretty much his entire life. In the case of Polish Catholic composer Józef Krupinski, he survived two of the worst death camps, Auschwitz and Buchenwald. In Buchenwald, he composed secretly by candlelight in the cadaver in the pathology lab, a place of gruesome SS human experiments by day. He used his voice as a voice of hope, of dissent in unimaginably horrific and traumatic circumstances. He wrote hundreds of works, many in collaboration with his fellow inmates. During the death march out of Buchenwald, he used his own manuscripts to light fires, saving the lives of many, possibly even his own. But that act of self-sacrifice extinguished his creative drive. After the war, he never wrote another note. This then begs the question, what is the common thread between myself, Krupinski, and Shostakovich? Their activism was so inspiring to me. The unexpected gift of my dark night of the soul was the emancipation of my voice. My mission was to take that mantle seriously, regardless of the cost, and to start forging a path that would make a real difference in the world. My third sign, the pandemic. Everything stopped. I finally had the time and space, the emotional support that I needed to embrace my new role as a creative activist. My entire life, I felt like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. Nothing felt right. Just like nylons never feel quite right. Doesn't matter what you do. I detested being treated as a commodity and struggled with the parasitic nature of the classical music business. Or, worse yet, being treated as wallpaper with only traditional roles assigned to women. My journey into flow began with redefining what a successful career in classical music looked like. I still play with orchestras, even soloing with them, but that's no longer my main focus. I started exploring the power of healing music. New advancements in imaging technology clearly demonstrate how music affects the brain. It doesn't just affect a small part, as we once thought. It lights up the entire brain. Repetitive musical elements induce entrainment, lowering the brain waves. Just as a purr of a cat or a heartbeat can lower your heart rate, it helps you to de-stress and relax. Additionally, the US Surgeon General has recently released reports about the effects of long-term stress on your health. It doesn't look good. It doesn't matter what your age or demographic. The results are equally disastrous. Additionally, our modern society and the epidemic of isolation causes a myriad of health problems. The equivalent is smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. A complete pack. Put that in your hat and, well, you get my drift. My mission into flow clarified with each of these discoveries. I had found that through connection and community and healing music, that I could create my ikigai, which is the Japanese concept of the alignment of purpose through the convergence of 4 different areas: skill, passion, what you can be paid for, because, we all got to eat, and what the world really needs. I started writing music collaboratively with my husband, Cello Dave. We got married. We now craft shooting star dive bar moments for others. Moments that feel like being underwater, moments of transcendent calm. The very same feeling I experienced upon hearing David's music for the first time. If the timing is right, music can be a catalyst to your future. Everyone's experience is different. Sit back and relax. Give yourself the gift of time. It is your most valuable asset, after all. As we share our music with you today, all I ask is that you be open to a decision, a choice, or a connection. Maybe this is your first sign, the sign that you need to move forward. In the words of composer Philip Glass, they continue to echo. We don't know where the river is going. All we need to do is listen. Thank you. It's beautiful.